A Swift Kickin' Ass, episode 52.
All big changes start with a swift kick in the ass. Join the journey of lifelong friends, John Curren and Tom Stewart, as they make conventional thought bend over and take a boot to the keister. Warning, listeners may notice a force equal to or greater than needed to get your ass moving. A swift kick in the ass, living life on your terms.
Welcome, I'm Tom Stewart. I'm joined with my lifelong childhood friend, John Curren, and we have a special guest today. His name's Aaron Anastasi. And I know I always butcher names, but basically the premise of the show today is how to get the results you want in life. And the answer is really closer than you think, and our guest Aaron Anastasi is going to basically help us answer that. Let me tell you a little bit about Aaron before we get into the show. He's a Southern California native. He's graduated with a master's degree from Princeton, where he studied philosophy and psychology. He's also a founder and coach of an internationally recognized Superior Singing Method, an online singing lesson program that grosses 7 figures annually. That's pretty cool. With nearly 10 million views, this guy's cooking it over on YouTube, and 100,000 subscribers. Aaron has the #1 singing life lesson channel on YouTube. He's also a prominent success coach for clients for industry-leading film directors, marine biologists, TED Talk speakers, and he's releasing a book, and that's why we have him on here, called The Voice of Your Dreams. It's scheduled to be released, going to print in January, and probably be out by mid-March. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Yes. So, Aaron, let's just get right into this. What prompted to ask yourself, how do you get the results that you want in life? I know seems like you've been asking yourself that question for quite a long time. You've done a lot of really interesting things.
Yeah, let me tell you the short answer, which is one word, and then let me tell you a couple of stories that kind of ramp up into how it worked. Thing that caused me to ask that question is failure, and lots of failures, and really wanting certain things and being frustrated around this idea of not being able to find it, of working hard, working really, really hard, but seeming to get the same types of results over and over again. And so now let me back up. For me, it all started when I was sitting in a coffee shop I got a life coach. I know people have different ideas about life coach and and at the time I was like, a life coach? I'm living life fine. Actually, the results of my life would prove that I wasn't living life fine, but I was sitting with my life coach or success coach, and I was frustrated. I was at a point actually in my life where I was even depressed. I was angry and frustrated because I was wanting certain results in my life, especially around music and the film industry, that I couldn't really figure it out. It seemed like I couldn't get the results I want. So he asked me one question that really ignited this whole journey for me that's lasted several years now. And the question that he asked me is, he said, who do you have to be in order to get the results that you want? And it's a simple question, and I've even probably heard it before, but it landed for me this time in a way that it like ignited something inside of me. Who would I have to be to get the results I want? You see, like I said, I was really hard worker. I felt like I was pretty tenacious, but it was getting these same results. And what I came to realize throughout this journey, this idea of who I have to be, I found that I needed to redesign my thoughts and beliefs, because our thoughts and beliefs are like a GPS system, and if that GPS system is broke, it doesn't matter how many times we put in different addresses, it's going to keep getting us to the same place. So that's how my mind was working. The working harder wasn't working; it was getting me the same thing. So once I started looking at my limiting voices, the limiting thoughts in my mind, and the things I was telling myself, then my quality of actions changed, and then my results began to change. So that's a short story. We can go, that's the short response. We can go more into depth about what some of the chapters say, and even some of my stories as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great start, and I certainly relate to that myself. I think Tom does as well. How well do you think you knew yourself at that time when your life coach asked you that question? Did you feel like you knew yourself really well, and just
I did. I at that point I felt like, and that's part of the frustration, right? It's like crazy people don't realize they're crazy. That's what makes them crazy. That's what was going on in my own mind. It was like I felt like I was really self-aware. I knew what was going on until I started exploring my thoughts and beliefs about life and what was getting me the results that I didn't want. So it was as he began to poke around in these ideas of what I believe, I found a couple things. Here's just one tiny little simple thing that had a radical shift in my belief system. I believed that nobody would want to work with me. I didn't know I believed this until we started talking about it, but I believed, well, nobody really wants to work with me, or nobody in LA would really want, because I live in Los Angeles, and I had all these films I wanted to make and I wanted to act in them, and so but nobody would really want to work with me, and I don't want to bug people. That was part of the limiting voice, was maybe like I'm not good enough, so people don't want to work with me. So part his challenge for me and my challenge for myself was, what if I challenge that, just that one simple limiting voice of I don't want to bug people, or people don't want to work with me. So I decided, I knew what it would take to get this first film made. I made like a 10 minute, I wrote like a 10-minute, it was like a 14-page short film. And so I thought, okay, what if I just went in with this way of being? So the idea of not doing, but being. Who would I have to be in this conversation? I'm going to be the type of person that believes that I have something of value to offer this person and the world. So when I went to make requests to my filmmaker friends and my actor friends, I went in with that way of being, which changed the quality of my actions, which got me the result was, 6 months later, I was on set in downtown Los Angeles with 35 volunteers and really great filmmakers, making a film that I wrote, produced, and was acting in. And then fast forward to today, it's in 2 festivals. It's actually screening in about a month from now. So that's just one story of what happened.
And that's so cool. I would think that being an actor and an artist, that would kind of toughen you up to rejection. That's what I understand about actors and actresses, is that they have to go through a lot of rejection. So I could see where that's what you were thinking of. You've probably been rejected so many times that it has to get to you. It has to get to you.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I talk about in my book, is because rejection gets to you only when your thoughts get to you. So what I mean by that is, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm feeling depressed, or anything that I'm feeling, I can always look at my thoughts and see where it's coming from. So for example, if I, just as an analogy, if I walk to the window and it's raining, and my thought process is, it's terrible when it rains because there's tons of traffic, and I'm not going to be able to get as much work done, then I look at the rain and think the rain is causing me to feel frustrated. Or I can walk to the window and be like, oh, it's raining, it's so refreshing, and California needs the rain, and it's so beautiful. I'll think the rain is making me feel this way. So the same thing about if I'm an actor. If I'm forecasting being like assigning meaning to something that hasn't happened yet, or assigning meaning to something that happened. So if I'm saying, oh, I didn't get this part, which means I'm not a good enough actor, which means I will never be on a show, which means I'll never reach my dreams, and then the depression sits in. So if I examine my thoughts, I can usually figure out where my feelings are come from, and that's when the rejection begins to hurt, is when my thoughts create a meaning around a situation.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, I've been reading a book recently called Choice Theory. It's written by Dr. William Glasser. So he's a medical doctor, but he's also he's more than that. He's I think some type of engineer, as well as he's worked in an educational system, and he's passed. This is an older book, but he talks about much of what you just talked about, and about how we control our thoughts and how we control ourselves and our actions. And that's really the only thing that we can control. When we interact with other people, we're just they're just passing along information to us. And that's really all we can do. And how we interpret that information does reflect in our lives. So Aaron,
if a lot of the people, our listeners that listen to the show, they come here because they're trying to change their life. They have that swift kick in the ass, something that turned them around. Now, you've already talked about getting a coach. What was it that initially made you even think about getting a coach? Was it just that, did you hit rock bottom somewhere, or was this, I have to do it? Did you see it on the internet, or did you listen to a podcast? What inspired you?
Yeah, what did inspire me? When I moved to LA, part of what inspired me was just that state of being that I was in. In different parts of my life, I've had different successes and highs and lows, of course, like we all had. But at that point, I was at a low and had been for a while. And I was part of a faith community at the time. And it was just a mentor. I just wanted somebody who was a mentor that would kind of disciple me for a couple of weeks. And that was really all that happened. But he just happened to be a coach. And as he started working with me, it started shifting me in a big way. So it was kind of a roundabout sort of way. I didn't actually look for a life coach. In fact, I thought the idea of a life coach was silly to me at the time, which is funny because now I am a life coach and have been for years now, and I'm watching now my own clients shift in big ways. So the catalyst, I kind of accidentally got there, I guess, is the answer to that question.
So if someone's new and they're just starting out, or they want to, they pick up your book, where do they start? Where do you suggest?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of coaching now, and it's becoming more and more in vogue and more accepted to use a coach. I heard even Bill Gates the other day saying everybody needs a coach, whether you're a CEO or a director, or he said even a bridge player. Everybody needs a coach no matter what. So I would really recommend getting a coach. I mean, it was radically transformative for me, and then it is for my clients. In fact, one of my clients, just a story of one of my clients, he came to me and he was a director, and he had some successes as a director, a commercial and music video director, but he had this short film that he really wanted to make. He was passionate about raising awareness and raising finances to help stop sex trafficking, but he was stuck in kind of the shame of a failed crowdfunding campaign when we first started working together. So, but after a couple of months of working together and looking at his limiting voices and his thoughts and beliefs and what he thought he was capable of and what he was resolved about what the industry was like, once we started getting over that stuff, within 2 to 3 months, he raised not only $60,000, but which was his initial goal, he raised $80,000, made the film, and even more than that, like reinvigorated his sense of possibility, so much so that he went on a couple of months later to win a CMA award, a Country Music Association award for Best Music Video of the Year. That was actually just a couple of months ago.
That's pretty cool. So the other thing I noticed that you talk a lot about is like being versus doing. You're a big person about action, right? Even if you have to fake it till you make it. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I do talk a lot about being and being more important than doing, but then in my book I talk a lot about action, about doing. So I'm a big proponent of doing, but it's always more effective when it comes out of a different way of being, and that's actually not very clear. But it's the idea of once we realize what our thoughts are, once we realize what our beliefs are, and we begin to redesign those, then it forms a different way of being for us. And let me give you another example of that. I when I came to LA, I used to work out at 24 Hour Fitness in Hollywood, and I would just park at the bottom floor of the garage, and I'd get in the elevator, I'd take it up to the 4th floor where the gym was. And this one day I got in the elevator and the doors started closing, and this guy was running toward me. He was kind of a good distance away. Hey, hold the elevator. And I hit the door open button, but it was too late. The doors just kept closing. And then when he got right up to the elevator and it was just about to close, and he was like, "Punk, bitch." He was really, really angry for one of two reasons. I'm guessing he either thought I hit the door close button, or he didn't see me go for the button at all and thought I just didn't want to help him out. Here's why I tell that story, and like, what does that have anything to do with your question you asked? See, his thoughts and beliefs created a certain action. In his mind, he thought this guy doesn't want to help me, this guy's against me, any number of things this guy was thinking, and it created a certain action which got him a certain result. Because here's what ended up happening. I was a little taken aback after he had said that. Then I hear this ding, and the doors, I hadn't gone anywhere, and the doors opened back up. And so there he is standing, and his face, he's just got this look on his face of like kind of horror, like he wasn't expecting to now be confronted with his anger, and he found himself in a really awkward situation. So his thoughts and beliefs led him to these certain actions which got him a certain result. So to me, I'm really, really big on action, but it first starts with, what do we believe about ourselves? What do we believe about the world around us? And I found that for myself and for many of my clients, it's things like, I don't have what it takes, or this is never going to work, so why even try? Or it's too late to pursue that now, you're too far behind, just give it up. So these limiting voices create the boundaries of how big we allow our world to be. So once we shift that way of being by shifting our thoughts and our beliefs, then I'm all about action, all about action.
So did you get an apology from him?
You cut out a little bit there. What was that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you get an apology from the guy? I mean, you said that was an awkward moment. I could imagine it would be.
We stood there, and the first thing I said, it wasn't clever, but I just blurted out, "Well, that wasn't a very nice thing to say." He didn't say anything. He just stepped in the elevator. He turned around and awkwardly, boom, 4 floors, boom. He just sat in this awkward silence.
That's funny. I've been in that situation where I've hit the button and it closes, but I never had anyone call me a punk bitch. That just felt bad as I went away.
I've hit the close button. For me. I've hit the close button instead of the open. I meant to hit the open, but I hit the close by a mistake, and I think we all relate to
Then
that.
you just got to shoot him the bird and pretend that you did it on purpose.
I love it.
You talk about, too, that freedom is a natural byproduct of a disciplined life. Could you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah. I think as kids we kind of think, oh, well, I want freedom, and freedom means no restraints. Freedom means just doing whatever I want, and then I could be free. And I know as adults we don't believe that. We would never say, oh, well, I get freedom by just seeking out freedom. It's like the same idea with happiness. We don't find happiness by seeking after happiness. We usually find happiness by serving other people. It's this kind of roundabout sort of way. And same thing I find with freedom is that the more disciplined I am in any area of my life, the more freedom I have in that area. So discipline really equals freedom. So if I want to be, my wife and I, we teach financial classes at our house, and I've just found the more disciplined we are with keeping a budget and sticking to our budget, that discipline includes the natural byproduct of that is a financial freedom and a sense of peace within our finances. But if we just kind of let it go and we're like, oh, whatever, and we're just credit cards and that whole thing, then we're going to find ourselves on the opposite of freedom. We're going to find ourselves in debt and in bondage to creditors and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've been there, done that. It's not fun at all. and I agree with you. It's being disciplined about your finances does allow you freedom. It is a byproduct. And I think that the more secure you are, especially in financial sense, the happier you are. And if you think about that, it really applies to different areas of your life as well. Think about friendship. I know you talk about relationships and about how important that is. If you're insecure with your relationships, you're also not going to be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of pinball off what you were saying, you had said earlier, like if somebody was listening to this podcast and they're like, oh, what's my next step? And I do believe in coaching. One of my chapters is just called Get a Coach. But another thing that deals with this, it connects with the finance thing that we're talking about, is when we get tied up in these knots of language. So let's go back to these limiting voices in our minds. So our world is occurring to us in a certain way because of our limiting voices, and that's affecting our actions. So we want to affect how our world occurs to us by looking at the limiting voices in our head that are affecting our actions and redesigning those. And one way that we can redesign the way our world occurs to us and kind of redesign those thoughts is through other language. So we're getting tied up in these knots of language, these limiting voices in our head. Other language could help us untie those knots. And that language, to me, is the language of a vision, a declaration, and commitments, like what we're committed to, getting super, super crystal clear about what our vision is for our future and for our lives. Because vision generates clarity for purposeful action. So once we get clear around that, our world occurs to us differently, and then our actions show up differently, and we begin to get different results from that.
That's excellent. I totally agree with you. You said that you're married now. How long have you been married, and how has that impacted, the way you look at the world and the way you dream about, that vision that you have in your mind? Does that change your perspective, or?
Yeah, that's it. I like that because it has shifted me. And let me go back even before marriage and what happened with my wife and I. So when I first started being coached, and I started this whole search, this whole journey of this way of being idea to shift and get the results that I wanted in my life. At that time, I was dating, who is now my wife, was my girlfriend at the time, and we were kind of stagnant in relationship. My finances I was barely getting by financially, and I was not pursuing a lot of the dreams that I wanted to pursue. So within a year, I had quadrupled my income, and was getting closer and closer to my dreams. And now, fast forward to now, I'm in a really fun marriage. I've been married now for 2.5 years, in a really fun marriage. So that was even the relationship with her was a part of this new way of being and this new way of thinking. I found that one of my limiting voices around relationships and around being married was that marriage ruins relationships. Like marriage, once you get married, the relationship gets bad and generally ends up in divorce. And I know that's such a negative thing to say or even think, but that was so much of what I had seen from my parents and her parents, and just so much of the culture. But once now let's get back to the idea of the vision and the declaration, the commitment. I finally realized, no, the society and my parents don't decide what I get in my life. I decide what I get in my life from what I'm committed to and what my declarations are and what my vision is. So I got a clear-cut vision about what I wanted in my relationship with my wife and what I was committed to for her and for us long term. And that shifted the way I saw what is possible for my life. So much of this work that I do is about seeing and unearthing different possibilities that lead to better action and better results.
Yeah, I think that's great. The way I view that, and just said in a different way, is when you start asking, what can you do to make it a better relationship? That's better than asking your partner, what can they do, for you, or telling them what to do. It's a different view of the world. Tom and I are both married, so we understand.
Not to each other. Not to each other, too.
Oh, yeah. Not
Yeah, I found that, and it goes back to one thing I said earlier, is that service, to me, serving humanity is where I find the most happiness, the most income, the most fulfillment. And that's why one of my commitments to my wife, it's not big and lofty, it's just this simple commitment that keeps me grounded, is I'm committed to serving my wife 1% more than she serves me every single day. And obviously I don't know what that 1% is, but it keeps me in a mindset of like, I'm committed to serve her. I'm also committed to making her laugh 3 to 5 times a day, because I tend to be very serious, and I know and I like some levity, a little bit of lightness in the house. And I know she does too. So that's another really small thing that I'm committed to that creates a better environment to live in for both of us.
That's good. I've heard Stephen Covey talk about an emotional bank account, especially in relationships like that, where you got to put into it. And, every time you have an argument and you think that you win an argument, you're actually losing. It's actually hurting you. When you say words that you can't take back, those, they deplete your bank account per se.
Yeah. I've experienced that, depleting that bank account plenty with my wife. I certainly fail more than I succeed in my goals, but I do have my commitments, and I found some benefit from that.
So along the same lines, I've heard you talking about I can't get beyond this ceiling. I know what happens to someone that they hit a plateau, or they think that I make a certain amount of income and I'm never going to get beyond that because that's just the way it is. I'm a working class dude, and that's it. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I know I sound a little bit like a broken record here, but that's a perfect example right there of a limiting voice. Like I'm a working class dude, first of all, that, and then I'll never get beyond this income level. So those are two actual beliefs, and that with those beliefs, like we don't necessarily admit stuff like that all the time. Like I wouldn't be like, hey, I'm a working class dude, or hey, this is all I'm capable of. Sometimes we will, but when those beliefs are in our mind, they occur to us as reality. And if that's our reality, then that becomes the ceiling of all we're capable of, because it's all that we see possible for us. So again, it's a redesigning of that thought and beliefs. And it's two different ways of looking at the world and looking at the self. So it's fixed versus fluid. So if I believe that I'm a fixed person, I'm a fixed entity, or that my circumstances are fixed, then there's a certain amount that will only be possible for me. But if I see myself as fluid and ever changing and ever growing, then that's going to allow much more possibility for me. It goes into these knots of language. So if I'm tied up in these knots of language, I'm a working class dude. That's all I'm capable of. That's all I'll ever be. That's all my dad was. That's a knot. Like I'm tied up in that knot of that language. And the way to break out of that is with different language. This idea of generative language that generates something new inside of us, because we live into the future that we see coming toward us. And if the future we see coming toward us is this limited future that we've created in our mind, then that's all we ever get. But when we rewrite our future with, you know what, I'm not a working class dude, I'm capable of X, Y, and Z, that's when we begin to get different results. We change in the present when we change our future with our words and what we see coming toward us, and then we begin to live into that. And let me just tell one little story about that. My wife and I, back to the money thing, is when we got married, we were $30,000 in debt. And by we, I mean I brought $30,000 into the marriage, therefore we were $30,000 in debt. And the voice that I was believing forever is I had been carrying it for 10 or 15 years, this debt, and it was just occurring to me as like, all I can afford is this $139.11 payment every month. I memorized it because I paid it month to month for many, many years. But then when I got married, my wife and I said, okay, that's one thought we can believe. What if we get a commitment, a declaration, a vision, this idea of painting a new future with words that we can live into? And we said, no, we're going to be out of debt in 9 months. It was going to be my wife's birthday 9 months from that time. And we said, we're going to be out of debt 9 months at $30,000. And so even just creating that declaration, we wrote it down, we put it up on the wall, we told some friends what we were doing so that we'd now be accountable to it. And we began to put ourselves at risk for this new commitment. Not just like we write it down and be like, oh, I hope it happens, but it became now this game that we can play that was called debt-free in 9 months. And as we began the process of doing that, we ended up getting out of debt.
So were you able to accomplish that in 9 months?
I'm glad you asked that because we didn't. And here's the important thing that I learned from that when we have a goal, it's not so much about the exact goal that we hit the exact goal, but what the goal does for us. Not what the goal is, but what it does for us. So what that goal did for us, that 9 month goal, is within 9 months, we were 95% out of debt. And then we got that of the rest of the 5% of debt within the next, 3 weeks or 4 weeks. So we didn't hit the exact date, but that goal really ramped it up for us, and we were able to get out of debt just shortly after that.
No, yeah, I also brought debt into my marriage, and Took us a long time. I thought I was being a good husband, saying yes to her, even though we couldn't afford things and weren't doing crazy things. But you want to improve the house and stuff like that. But I am now, at the end of this year, it will complete a 9-year financial plan, and we will basically owe just the house. I mean, we'll just that's the only thing we'll owe on. So I'm right there with you. It was supposed to take about 4.5 years, and it's taken close to 9. But we have 3 kids, and we moved, and you can't let life get in the way. You need to live your life, and we made those changes to our plans along the way because that was the best thing for us to do at that time. So that's why I was asking you. It took me a lot longer to get through. But we also had a much bigger, goal.
And my situation was different in that we decided to get out of debt when this whole period of like I was being coached and my life was changing so radically. So my income was growing exponentially at that time, and we don't have kids, so that was part of our situation as well.
It's good to get that taken care of before you do.
Something that intrigued me is I know you have the superior singing method, and I like the whole build something that can create recurring and income without having to go back all the time. And I'm sure you'll probably update it and add to it, but something that kind of works passively for you. But what I heard you in another interview, and you were talking about how you had to you created something first prior to that didn't work so well, and then this is what I thought was really cool. You said it was a systematic approach, and you had to think about what techniques do you need to do and in what order in order to become a great singer or a good singer. And I really thought that was cool, and I think you can apply that to anything. Can you tell us a little bit about your process?
Yeah. I love even what the idea of debt, and you were saying it took you a lot longer, but you stayed on the path and you were tenacious to work toward that. That's what happened with us. So I created this program, and I have a couple of business partners as well, and we created what was called the Singing Guide. And it took us a couple years, 2 solid years to do it, and filmed all these videos and all excited about it. And we launched this thing, and it was a disaster. I mean, it was a complete failure. Like, it just didn't hit at all. It wasn't like, oh, we did okay. We had 0 signups. It was just a total flop. And so at that point, I did a couple of things. I first of all, I was very sad and very depressed and very disheartened for several weeks. That was part of the process. But after I kind of climbed out of that, I thought, why am I doing this? What is it that made me want to do this thing in the first place? And as I did that, I found that I'm driven, which is one reason that why I wanted to be a vocal coach and why I'm like a life success coach, results coach now, is that I'm passionate about helping people live fuller and freer lives. I'm glad you bring the freedom up earlier. I want people to live fuller, being like, I want them to live bigger lives, and I want them to live freer lives, whether that's debt free or whatever it means, just free in general. And so when I thought about that, and the idea of passive income was huge to me too, because like you said, I have so many dreams and so many fun things that I want to do, and I love being adventurous, that I wanted some passive income that would create a lifestyle that I wanted as well. And this apparently wasn't it. So once I realized that, it gave me this extra push of tenacity, like, no, I'm going to make this thing work no matter what it takes. I clicked into this all-in state and just said, I'm going to make this work no matter what. So as we thought through it, we got this idea, like you said, there's all these singing. You can go on YouTube and you search the internet and you can find out anything about singing. So why are hundreds of thousands of people signing up for my program all the time and going to my YouTube and doing all that? And what I found is that I created a method that was my own. I was a terrible singer growing up, and so I had to learn how to sing. I didn't just grow up, was born out of the womb and was awesome. Then I wouldn't know the struggle of what it took to go from garbage singing to like really good singing. So I really thought through that, and then I just systematized everything and put it in one program where it's like, this program is all you ever need. If you take the time to do this and really focus on doing this, you'll build the right things at the right time. I'll start you out exactly where you need to be from the beginning. I'll give you exactly the exercises every single day to do to where you're building a voice, because singing is not about natural talent. Nobody's naturally talented. I know people would argue with me about that. That's obviously my opinion, but it's about building up the muscles in your vocal tract with the right techniques and the right exercises in the right order to build yourself into, having a good voice. I was terrible, and then I sang professionally later on in my life. That's my story. So that's what we created. We refilmed everything with better quality videos. We called it, we changed it to Superior Singing Method, and it was this idea of superior singing in 8 weeks or less.
No, that's pretty cool. I'm not a singer, and I've never sang anything in front of anyone except for a couple months ago. A couple months ago, we were having on Thanksgiving of all things. I'm a broadcast engineer, so I had a bunch of microphones, a mixer, and I got this karaoke program, right? So everyone, I set it up. We had about 35 people over the house. Everyone's singing. Everyone was having a great time. It was like the best party the best Thanksgiving we ever had. And I decided I was going to sing to my wife, and I sang an Elvis song, and I've never sang in front of anyone. It was the scariest thing I've ever done. Even though it was my family and friends, it's still standing up on a mic in front of 35 people and not knowing how it's going to come out.
Yeah, I feel you, man. I can feel that in my heart and in my stomach, even as you're saying it, like that frightful feeling. You know what? I just hearing you say that, I would love to sign you up for free for my program once we're off air. If you
that'd
think
be
that
cool.
would help you, if you want to sing another Elvis song.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That'd be cool. And actually, everyone loved it. And all the girls were like, "When are you going to sing a song for me?" And I was like, "Well, So it won me points in that emotional bank account for sure.
That's so
yeah,
good.
I think our wives and neighbors would all appreciate if we learned how to sing. But yeah, that's and I think it applies to life as well. I mean, that everyone, on this show we talk about disrupting conventional belief, and it's usually, it's usually a common belief that people can't sing. You have to be naturally talented, and your method shows otherwise.
My thing is I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and I remember one of my coaches he said that between, when you were mentioning talent and natural talent, he actually said that he would rather have a student that had no natural talent, because what happens is sometimes guys come in and they're submitting everyone, and they're good like week one. They just have an affinity for it, and they're tapping out people that they shouldn't be tapping out. But the thing is that they get lazy and they never have that motivation to really perfect it and be really, really good. It's the person that's challenged and has issues to overcome that, put into time on the mat, try to figure out what technique I'm doing wrong, and listen to the coach. And those are the ones that grow and actually become a better competitor.
Yeah, that tenacity is such a huge part of success for me. The successes that I've had is really, really walking something to the finish line. Even with Superior Singing Method. So we launched Superior Singing Method, and it was really successful for a couple of years. And then what we were doing is we were ranked on Google, and so if you type in any number of keywords, how to sing, singing tips, any like the top keywords, there were like I think 22 like top keywords that people were searching. We were at the like number 1, 2, and 3 spots, but mostly number 1 spots for most of the primary keywords. So that was serving us really well for a long time. And then in 2011, Google released this algorithm called Panda. And I know nothing about algorithms except everything I've just said so far, but what I do know is it destroyed us. It took all of our top keywords, and it took us down to page 15 on all those words. So not spot 15, but literally page 15. So overnight, our business was completely tanked. Like tons of traffic to zero traffic in an instant. And so I say this as part of the tenacity thing, and this idea of pivoting. When you own businesses or anything you're doing, this idea of pivoting. Okay, this happened, we could say, oh, we had a good run and then move on, or be tenacious and say, how can we pivot this thing and get this thing up and running again? And so that's actually when we did the YouTube thing. We have affiliates, which are people that sell our product for us, and they get a cut of
Right.
so and it's a digital product, so it's actually a good cut. They get 75% of the profit because there's no real overhead for us except hosting. But so one of our guys, we're asking him, how are you getting the traffic? And he said, oh, YouTube videos. And so we're like, okay, YouTube videos. So that's when I filmed the initial 22 YouTube videos that, over the course of a few months began blowing up, that became what it is today. And we have a really strong following now, but that was the pivot. And that took, our income dropped significantly for 3 to 6 months minimum that it took to film and post and give time for those videos to really blow up. So and that story of tenacity with these businesses, we've had hundreds of failures just like that with that. In fact, we're in a similar one right now where we're pivoting again. And so it's that tenacity that kind of keeps these things moving.
You're not the first person. I've heard about the Panda destroying businesses overnight. And I understand why Google did it. There was a lot of people gaming the system, and they're
Right.
trying to level the playing field. But it hurts me, it pains me to imagine that your business overnight is just gone, because you're dependent on Google. And it really does suck. They've had multiple other animals come out after that that have even made it worse, right? The hummingbirds and whatever else they come out with.
Yeah. So we found, just this isn't an entrepreneur lesson, but for those entrepreneurs out there, we found what helped for us was our continuity program. So we have a whole other part of the site that's so much content that people are paying $20 a month for, and so that's consistent income, not dependent on anything Google or anybody else does. And then of course growing a list, and then keeping up with that list, giving them good content, and then selling our other products through that. So that's really helped us not be so dependent on Google, which, like you said, it can be fickle.
That's smart advice. That's really good. I think that's good in any business. I mean, no matter what you're doing, if you're a plumber, you have repeat customers, right? So, I mean, why go out and constantly try to find new customers when you already have one in hand?
Right.
Well, Aaron, I think that you're the kind of guy who does not put all of his eggs in one basket. I mean, look at you. Look at all the different things that you've done. Acting, singing, songwriting, adventurer. Now you're an author. You're continuously growing and challenging yourself, and I think that's what it takes to be success. It's the joy is in the journey. There's no real true destination. We just got to keep going and keep struggling and try to keep being better and better. I think you're a great example of that.
Well, I appreciate that. I attribute it all to my mom. She put that little nugget in my mind when I was a kid, and she was just like, just do what you love to do, and all the finances will work out. And so I've always done that, and it's been good advice. It's really helped me, because I'm always passionate about the thing I'm doing in the moment that I'm doing. And once it gets boring, I hire an assistant or I hire a team to run it, and I do what I'm passionate about. So with all my businesses, I got people working on them, and because I want to write this book, so all my passion went into that book. And so it's fun to be able to have, for me, I just kind of get bored, my feet fall asleep doing the same thing over and over again. So it's been a really fun journey for me.
I think what happens too is you get comfortable. I know it's happened to me where you're doing the same job in and day out, and you're good at it, but you're not challenging yourself, and you get stuck in a rut, and it becomes like oh well, it's just another job. It's and you don't pursue and keep moving and try to up the game.
Yeah, I if I'm not doing at least 1, 2, 3 things a week that scare me, then then I feel like I'm not living my biggest life. I'm like playing not to lose rather than playing to win. And I always want to play to win, and so it's keeping those risks in front of me is what keeps life invigorating, but also keeps me remembering that I am alive, and that this is how the next hill gets tackled. I actually have one client who's a marine biologist, and she's very successful marine biologist, but she loves her job, but it was the same thing for her. Like, she's doing it, but there felt like there was something missing. So as we started working together, she realized she actually was passionate about helping other people reach their dreams. So now she's pivoted, and she's still a marine biologist, but she's taken on clients, and she's become a coach as well. And she started devouring books and doing seminars, doing talks, and it's pretty incredible to see her go. So it's not even just about, hey, if your life is terrible, try this. It's just like, hey, even if you love what you're doing and looking for something new, what limiting voices may be in your head? That's another dream that you may have that is your limiting voices are holding you back from.
Now, how about I know you've mentioned faith, and I know that's important to you. How has that contributed to your lifestyle and your success?
Yeah, I think in a few ways. One is I was raised in the church, and I've continued to kind of keep the flame of faith going in my life through faith communities and being part of communities. And I think part of that is just it helped this value system of serving others, which has really benefited me over time of loving people and serving them and being a person of character. And again, obviously I fail often, but it is a value of mine that I think has guided me into business practices that have been helpful for me. And then on the other side, just on a personal note, is that there's so much peace that comes from having faith, that with all the craziness that could be my life and my being an entrepreneur and all the fun adventures, there's a lot of potential anxiety that comes as a result of that. And seeing life as a fun game that I'm playing, that I play passionately and intensely and fiercely, but not making it too significant in the grand scheme of things, understanding that there is a higher being that is there, that is taking care of things ultimately. That's been helpful for me anyway.
Cool. Yeah. Does that help with overwhelm? I know you mentioned being overwhelmed, and I heard that you have assistants and so forth. But the average person doesn't have an assistant. What would you recommend?
Yeah. Okay. So not about the faith thing.
Just being overwhelmed, because I know, like my wife, man, she's always stressed out from work, and she wants to start a podcast too, but she's always like, I just got so much stuff to do. I get the kids on the weekend. I got she does jujitsu too. She's at the gym. She's doing work. She's a professional, so it's difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. The overwhelm thing for me comes back to, okay, what am I believing? Sorry for the broken record, but for me, if I feel overwhelmed, actually, let me just say three things. The first one is, if I'm overwhelmed, there's usually something that I'm afraid of that I'm avoiding. Almost always one main thing. So if I feel overwhelmed, let's say, so I'm doing the audiobook. I'm actually doing the audiobook myself right now. And so about a week ago, I was feeling very overwhelmed about this massive project of doing the audiobook and making it sound good and having the reading performance have the tone be right for what I want to communicate. Just all that stuff. I felt overwhelmed by that. So it made me feel overwhelmed about my whole life, because this one thing was really scaring me. So the first thing is understanding that paring it down to that one or two things that are really actually bothering me. What am I really afraid of? And then getting this idea of action. Okay, so what is the very smallest one thing that I could do about the thing that I fear most, even 3 minutes or even 5 minutes, just to get it started? Because once I do that, the hardest part is always just before we start. So I was in this overwhelmed state with the audiobook, but once I just sat down and I did the intro, and I had all these problems with audio and all this other stuff, that's a whole separate story. But once I started getting it going and I got the first couple of minutes and it sounded the way I wanted it to sound, it was like, all of a sudden I didn't feel overwhelmed about anything in my life anymore, because that was the main thing that was on my mind. So once I get started, I got into that momentum, and it squashes those limiting voices in my mind, and it squashes that fear, because all fear lives in the future. It's all about me picturing the future and what might happen. So all that fear is gone when I'm in action doing the things that I love to do, and allow that momentum to carry me. So that's the main thing. Getting in action is one, finding out the limiting voice and what I'm most afraid of, and understanding that overwhelmed is just, it's a thought believed. It's not an actual thing in reality. It's just a story we believe. I am overwhelmed is a story that I believe. But another story that I could believe is, I only have one thing to do right now. There's only one thing I could do at a time. And that thing right now is talking into this microphone for that podcast. Nothing else in my world exists. I'm not thinking about the future. I'm not thinking about, oh, what about this? And how long is this going to take and all that? If I'm right here, right now, doing the one thing, that's the story that could bring me a lot more peace than I've got a million things. They'll never get done. Therefore, I won't feed my family. Therefore, we'll be on the street. It's just that downward spiral thinking.
That's very good advice, man.
So Aaron, your book's coming out in February or early March. How do our listeners get a copy? How can they reach you?
So the best thing right now is to go to, so the book's called The Voice of Your Dreams. The idea is the voice of your dreams. Everybody has a voice of their dreams, but it can be hard to hear and hard to follow when our voices of limitation are shouting so much louder. And that's actually the subtitle of my book is Turn Down the Voices of Limitation and Turn Up the Volume of Success. So anyway, I say all that to say, The Voice of Your Dreams, if you go to thevoiceofyourdreams.com, that website is up, and you get already a bunch of referral quotes from people who have read the book. And then there you can sign up for my email list, but also if you sign up for the email list, you can immediately download 2 free chapters of the book, the first 2 chapters of the book. That's the first thing. It'll also be on Amazon. It'll be on Audible. It'll be on Kindle. It'll be all those things when it does launch in, I'm guessing, early to mid-March-ish. Also, for your listeners, what I'll do is I'm going to do a code through Amazon for the first, I haven't decided, 24 to 72 hours, that they can get the book at just like a screaming discount. I mean, something like stupid, like $3 or $4 or something. I'll do anyway, I haven't decided, but I'll have that available for you guys as well.
Awesome. Appreciate that.
Awesome. That sounds good. All right. So one final note. I know on the end of the book, you mentioned finishing strong, and I was intrigued about finding your voice. And that's important, to stand out and be an individual and have something different to offer. What do you suggest?
Yeah, the first thing I suggest is that everybody is uniquely themselves. Like, everybody is a unique person and has a unique something to contribute and to offer. Now, finding and honing that thing is a whole different thing, but just understanding that that's true about you, I think, is one really good place to start. The other thing is that it takes time to hone your voice, and that's okay. It's probably not going to happen in 6 weeks or 6 months, but that's totally fine too. I remember reading Steve Martin's book, Born Standing Up. He talks about how, and now I'm going to totally misquote it, but I did quote it in the book. He says something like, I prepared for stand-up for 8 years, and then I did stand-up for 15 years. It was like his whole idea, I'm just butchering this, but his thing was, it took me 20 or 30 years to actually be successful and to hone my voice, and that's just part of the journey for everybody. So but the whole idea of how that ties into the voice of your dreams is, what is that vision that you want? What is that dream that you have? What is it that you really, really, really want? My clients come to me and they say, it's always the same types of things. I want to make more money. I want to have better relationships. I want a better career. And all those things, I'm certain they're true for them and every other human being that can hear my voice right now. But there's always something behind that. Okay, if you had those, what would that give you? It's like, what do you really, really, really want? And searching that out is where your unique voice usually comes, is finding out what it is you're passionate about. For me, partially, it's the helping people live fuller, freer lives. Like, everything I do, it comes out of that. But and then the other thing is this whole idea of acting and filmmaking. What disappointments do you have? Where are you resolved in life? what are like touchy points when people talk about, like, it's actually in those areas that we usually find what we really, really want the most, that is like scary and that's like hidden inside of us. So the voice of your dreams and this idea of finding your unique voice is really finding what you love and what you're passionate about. And my book, it helps people not only discover that, but actually step by step in a way to attain those things, and take that dream out of like this kind of idea of this Disney longing dream and wishing upon a star. Like, take it out of the dream realm and pull it into the future moment and turn it into a project that I can begin working on for 3 minutes today, 5 minutes today, and start getting momentum to where I can actually make this thing happen and stop making it a want and a longing.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
well,
it sure is.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on the show, and it's words of wisdom. I really did enjoy this interview. John, any last words?
No, I really enjoyed it as well too. And I was just going to say, Aaron, sounds to me like you didn't believe The Secret.
No, I can actually say something about that really quick. I'm not going to like, dog on the Secret. I think The Secret is it's an initial step. It doesn't tell the whole story. This is just like, to me, sitting and saying I'm gonna think and it'll create and it'll come to me. That's the idea of the law of attraction. I'm very much in the law of creation. We have the power to create. We have the power of choice to create something. And so getting busy, deciding what it is that we want, unearthing and redesigning our limiting voices and getting after that thing is this law of creation. So yes, visualize it. Yes, get clear about it. Absolutely. But to say I'm going to attract it, it actually puts us in a victim mindset of I'm waiting for it to come to me and I'm still hoping and longing, and there's something out there that I need in order to be a fulfilled human being that I don't have right now. And I just don't think that that's true. Life is a game. It's like what we want. Let's just go after it with a fun passion, but not expect that it's going to come to us. Let's go out and create it. We have the power of choice. Let's choose ourselves and go out and make it happen.
Perfect. I think that's a perfect way to end our show. I think I know I really enjoyed this conversation. I know our listeners will as well. We all walk away from this learning something, and with the direction also to head. You gave us some very practical advice. So thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate our listeners checking us in. Make sure you stop by swiftkickinass.com. Join our free membership site. We got some cool videos, courses in there. We also have John's simple spending plan that's got him $90,000 out of debt, right, John? So, any last words?
No, that's it. We'll catch you next time.
All right, peace.
Thanks for listening.